Could there be an Ivisic family reunion in Champaign? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Locked On Illini. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I decided to do this episode live just because we are 4 subscribers away from hitting, I believe it's 2,500 subs. So, I figured if we can do it live, let me know if you are the 2,500th sub. I'd really 2,600. Oh my gosh, we're 2 away. Maybe we can do this episode. Again, my name is Sonny Verma, your host. Every single day, there's Illini content right here on Locked On Illini. We talk rosters, we talk transfers, we talk football, we talk everything. So if you are a fan of the Illini, I know this channel has grown so much over the past week. We love having you over here. Make sure you like this video already. Make sure you're subscribed. We've got a lot to talk about. And I wanted to kind of jumpstart the conversation today because there's news, but it's not like actual news, but it's kind of news because almost all of Illinois Nation is kind of talking about it. And that is Zvonimir Ivisic, center from Arkansas, has decided to enter the transfer portal. Now, Illinois has not had much luck when it comes to the transfer portal. We've had exits and no incoming players yet. Obviously, last week we lost Morez Johnson. We lost Trey White. A lot of Illini fans are panicking, asking, hey, when is Illinois going to get their first incoming transfer? And when is it going to be announced? And I will say that, as soon as Zvonimir decided to enter the transfer portal, literally every outlet you can imagine talked about him essentially coming to Champaign and joining his brother, Tomislav Ivisic, who, of course, we're all well familiar with. Tommy, at this point, it looks like he's coming back next season, but really, the way this transfer portal is, whoever really knows. So, obviously, locking in a guy like Zvonimir, his own brother, would go a far way in making sure we have Tomislav coming back next year as well. So, not that would be the reason you bring Big Z, but it wouldn't hurt, if that makes sense. Let's talk about Big Z a little bit. He's somehow bigger than Tommy. He's 7'2", a little lighter, and he averaged 8.5 points last year, 4.3 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks in only 19 minutes a game. He was top 15 in the entire country when it comes to his block percentage. And he actually had a 6-game stretch last year where he averaged 17.2 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 2.8 blocks a game on 40% three-point shooting. For the season, he shot 38% from three-point land. And so when talking about what kind of fit Zvonimir would be, let's be real. Let's go back down to the basics. What kind of talent does Brad Underwood want? What kind of player does he recruit? He wants to build his teams with length. Zvonimir is 7'2", and the ability to shoot 3-pointers. And Zvonimir shot 38% last year. He fits both those. Those are check marks, essentially, when it comes to Big Z. Now, whether he's a good fit or not is up for debate. We'll talk positives first. And when we talk positives, we talk about, again, that 3-point shooting, matching Tomislav and Big Z up together. Now, I hope I don't know what Brad Underwood's plan would be, but I hope they're not slated to start together or play much together, because it doesn't seem like it would be much of a fit. Because you guys know, my everydayers in here will know, when I talk about Tomislav, I love that kid. I think he was our MVP last season, our most important player. But there was one big drawback, one big weakness that Tommy had, and that he's not exactly a very aggressive player. That's why I like Morez, because Morez was more of that dog, whereas Tommy, as big as he is, 7'1", 260 pounds. He didn't really like the brutal physicality that comes with being a Big Ten big. When it comes down low, he never really looked comfortable backing down his opponent. He was someone who very much so just liked to get to the top of the key, or shoot the three-pointer, and that's just where he liked to have a little space around him. Well, Big Z is basically Tommy, but even worse in that regard. Zvonimir is not a physical player at all. Another player that's purely built. He's a finesse player. If anything, he's kind of a shooting guard in a 7'2" body. Now, Big Z, I'm going to keep confusing these two. Big Z is a better blocker than Tommy is, but I think Tommy's got more of a foundational base on one-on-one. And again, not that Tommy's a great defender, but he was kind of the quarterback of our defense last year. I mean, how good our defense was, that's up for debate. But Zvonimir, in a lot of ways, I can see the added bonuses of bringing Big Z in. You get a chance to work Zvonimir and Tomislav together with Orlando Antigua. And I think that's the reason, basically, all the outlets are already targeting Champaign as Big Z's next destination, is because Orlando Antigua is very tight-knit with this family. He brought Zvonimir to Kentucky, where he had a pretty successful freshman season. And then last year, Zvonimir struggled a little bit. And, Orlando brought Big T to Champaign. And so it kind of makes sense that maybe there's a sense of familiarity with the family and, wanting the two brothers work close together with a guy who, by the way, is one of the best big men developers in the country. And I've said this before, even if Big Z was not involved in this conversation, the reason I want Tommy back is you give him an entire offseason to work with Orlando Antigua on the weaknesses in his game and to play like a more traditional big man. I think that's what could jump Tommy into being a late first-round pick next year. And that's why I kind of let's go to the negatives, and then we'll wrap this conversation up a little bit. The problem with bringing Zvonimir back is, what was this team bad at last year? We were very bad at defense. We weren't very athletic. And honestly, we didn't have the athletes. Well, those two are the same things. Well, Zvonimir doesn't answer any of that. And quite honestly, I just don't know how a Zvonimir and Tommy 4 and 5 spot position is going to work. And in particular on defense, because unless you're playing some sort of zone defense, which we know Brad Underwood would absolutely hate and would never play, you basically have those twin towers under the rim, and then you play a quick switching defense with the 3 wings and Kylan out there. Maybe that's the solution, but I don't think it is. I think the ideal situation for the Ivisic brothers for Illinois is basically you bring Zvonimir in as a rotational big, and you're very upfront about it. I know Zvonimir has been in NBA mock drafts as well. Now, he struggled last year, and this is why ultimately I think it's a good idea to bring in. Despite the negatives, his lack of defense, he's not really a physical type of player. A lot of the things that we kind of need to target in the transfer portal, he doesn't solve those needs. But another thing that we've all seen about this transfer portal is the prices are sky high. I mean, just because this might be the last time, it's kind of a no-holds-barred wild, wild west. Some of these price tags that you're seeing players go for, it's genuinely outrageous. And then, quite honestly, I don't know if Illinois was prepared for the prices to jump this high. Keep in mind, last year, Illinois spent about $4 million on transfer portal. And you know what? That was second in the Big Ten. This year, $4 million would probably be in the bottom half in the Big Ten Conference. We already talked about Indiana, who might be spending $8-9 million. Ohio State has talked about spending $8-9 million. Michigan is going to be right at that range. So that's double what Illinois spent last year. And they were second in the entire conference. So, the dollar bills are continuing to go higher. Bringing in Zvonimir, he can be a buy low project, right? I'd assume that you can get Zvonimir at a more decent price, especially for what the talent he is. Because, again, his freshman year, he looked really good for Kentucky. And sure, it didn't work out last year, but, I mean, logic tells you, John Calipari's never really been a player to max out the talent or to develop a talent. Here, coming to Champaign, coming to Illinois, he would get to work with, as I mentioned, one of the best big men developers in the entire country. So the best case scenario is you get Big Z at a discount. And because Big Z's here, you basically lock in Tomislav coming or staying in Champaign. So you lock in the most important piece of the offseason in Tomislav. You have another big for your rotation. And then who knows? After one season of Tommy and Big Z together and Orlando developing both, Tommy next season can move on to the NBA, which has always been the plan. He can develop himself into a maybe late first rounder. And then you'll have at that point a senior year Big Z who, maybe can get his confidence back, develop more of a big man skill set, and then he can be your starting senior center. Because again, he's working with Orlando. There'll be familiarity with the program. I think it can work. I'm curious on your guys' thoughts. I'm not saying that I'm super, super excited at the idea, but if the prospect is that you're buying low, then it absolutely makes sense because some of these prices are honestly, it surprises even me. And I think if you can get Zvonimir in, and more importantly, I think Illinois just needs a commitment. I think there's a lot of people panicking. I haven't even checked the chat yet, but there's a lot of people panicking about going through a full rebuild again. And I get it. I'm not exactly ecstatic about that either. But I think, bringing a guy in like Big Z, and if you look at his highlights, they look fun. He looks like he could be a really talented player. He just needs the right coach. And I think Orlando Antigua could be that coach. Let me know your comments, or let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll say one thing. If we do get Big Z and we do have Tomislav, we're going to have to balance that with a guy who's a lot more physical and a guy who is nitty and gritty. And you know what? Illinois has one in his locker room. And we'll talk about that right after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. And you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Me personally, I'm spending way too much money going out to eat. I got 2 kids. I'm tired. It's easy to go get food from the fast food restaurant. I know I got to keep that in check. And with Monarch Money, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game live. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute deals at unbeatable prices. Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to find better values for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., etc. And you have a little peace of mind. When you do buy your tickets, you can have the seat views before you buy. No surprise fees and lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button on the show and make sure you're subscribed. Thank you all so much. We have officially hit 2,600 subs right here on Illini. We're not even a year old, and the fact that this channel has grown this much, it's easy for me to come on here and do content every single day because of the support I get from you guys. If you haven't already, subscribe to us on all your favorite social medias. Locked On Illini. Find me at TheSunnyV on Twitter, or join our Discord. That seems to be growing. I think we have like 30 new people just over the weekend. It's Illini fans all over the country talking Illini, life, sports, everything, all day, every day. Link should be in the description. So I just got done talking about, the possibility and what seems like the likelihood that Big Z is going to be joining his brother Tomislav in Champaign. and how, of course, that gives you a very tall front court, a 3-point shooting front court. I mean, Big T was one of our best 3-point. I believe it was our second best 3-point shooter last year, and Zvonimir would have been our best 3-point shooter last year if he was on this team. But what they lack is, they might have size, but they lack that physicality. And you wouldn't be worried about that physicality if you had a guy like Morez Johnson Jr. coming back to the roster next season. Now, fortunately, that's not going to happen. Morez was the perfect guy, in my opinion, to pair next to Tomasov, just because I felt like they balanced each other out very well. Now, that's all kind of idea, because when we saw them on the court together, we did see that there was a lot of power forwards who gave Morez Johnson some trouble on the defensive end. So, they might have been just an idealistic scenario that I'm playing in my head. But regardless, now that we know it's not going to be Morez, it's certainly not going to be Jason Jaxtis, who's redshirted last year. We know it's not going to be Big Z because he's not a physical player himself. So Illinois is going to have to go out there and find a dog. The type of guy that plays for the Houstons, the type of guy who plays for a team like Auburn, a guy who basically is not going to let you mess around the rim. And it just got me thinking, does Illinois already have that player in the locker room? And that player, of course, is Ty Rodgers. Now, this is funny because it must have been, a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I talked about Ty Rodgers and whether there was any place for him on this roster. And ultimately, at the time, I said no. I said that as much as I valued Ty, as much as I thought he was a great basketball player, there was just no way, and this is how funny this is going to sound in hindsight, you can have Ty Rodgers have played big minutes with a guy like Morez Johnson Jr., who can't shoot as much as the father disagrees, and Trey White, because I said that even though Trey White caught fire at the end of the season, you can't really count on him being a great 3-point shooter all season long. So you can't give, if you're going to launch as many 3-pointers as Brad has shown that he wants to, you can't really do it with giving big minutes to Morez Johnson, Trey White, and Ty Rodgers. Well, that problem kind of solved itself. Morez Johnson Jr. and Trey White will not be playing for the Illini next year. And so all of a sudden, I do wonder if the Ty Rodgers camp is a little more open to returning. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't think it's going to happen. Why? I don't know. There's rumors. There is a common theme here, right? With Trey, with Morez, and with Ty redshirting. And that's Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson brought all three guys into Champaign. And now that he's gone, it's noticeable that all three guys are not with the team. So now Ty hasn't announced one way or the other. That's why I kind of wanted to talk about it now. But now that the circumstances have changed, ironically, I think Ty would be one of the perfect players for this Illinois roster next year. Now, again, don't get your hopes up. I don't think it's going to happen. Sure, he's not the size of Morez. He's not 6'9", 260. But, and he's not the rebounder that Morez Johnson was. But he's just as much, just one of those guys who looks like he plays for a team like Auburn, like Houston, like Michigan State. A team that's a physical and really wants to beat you up. And really, by the time you're done guarding Ty Rodgers for 40 minutes, you go home and you just want an ice bath. And we all talked about how this team kind of lacked that player last year, a guy who exemplified everyday guy, a guy who basically, you were scared to play with just because you knew you were in for a grind. Now, Ty can't shoot. And as much as, the narrative always is every offseason, he's working on his jump shot, this or that. I don't believe that for a second. And I would not even count on him being a below average shooter even next year if he were to come back for his junior year. But everything that both the Ivisics don't do well, I think Ty could actually provide. And I know for a fact that Brad Underwood absolutely values Ty's leadership in that locker room. Even during this past redshirt season, Brad would go out of his way, as would Trey White, just talking about how much of a leader Ty Rodgers was in that locker room. He was the main guy who would always play the best player for the scout team, so that Illinois could best prepare. If you're watching the games, you always saw Ty jumping up and down, being a huge cheerleader for the team from the bench. Has Ty already made up his mind? My guess is yes. But the fact that he hasn't been put in the transfer portal already, and the fact that we know that Brad really does want him back, and they wanted him back before Morez Johnson left. I'll tell you that much. They wanted him back before Trey White had announced that he was going to the transfer portal. So they value Ty Rodgers, I think, a lot more than admittedly I did, and a lot of the fan base did. Like, when the offseason hit, Brad and the coaching staff tried and continue to try to convince Ty to stay in Champaign. Whether he does or not, I'm not so sure. But I do know that should he decide to, I'm going to feel a lot more confident about what that front court is going to look like. Is he as tall as you need at 6'7"? Probably not. But again, you need that balance, and Ty's not going to solve everything. Bringing in Ty Rodgers isn't going to be what takes your team from being a finesse team to a physical team. Not at all. You're going to need 2 or 3 of Ty Rodgers type of players to fill out your roster. But I think bringing a guy like Ty in will kind of settle everything down, especially when it comes to the Illini fan base and what's being talked about as the culture at Illinois. You know, especially now, I'm going to be talking about this later on this week. People are talking about, hey, you know, what's going on at Illinois? What is up with this roster turnover and, you know, this chaos? I believe that's what I called it on Monday's episode. I think bringing in a guy like Ty, it will symbolize a kid that does buy into Brad, the coaching staff, and everything that they stand for. And more than that, again, I think it'll bring value to what he brings on the court, the locker room. I think Ty Rodgers would be the perfect player for this basketball team. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always get to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, welcome back. I figured I'd get to some of your comments before I ended this. Ross says, Ivisic twins and Ty Rodgers. It'll make a fun game when they play Morez at Michigan. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, the rumor mill is suggesting that our beloved Morez Johnson Jr. might be Wolverine next year. Now, nothing's confirmed, of course, but a lot of insiders are reporting it, and a contact I know who works with the Michigan NIL says the conversations are happening. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. I'm going to have a sick feeling. You know, it's going to be one of those. It's why I appreciate Coleman Hawkins so much last year. You know, despite him transferring, he said right off the bat, I'm not transferring to a Big Ten team, right? Just out of his duty he felt towards the University of Illinois. And, you know, Morez being in that maize and blue or maize and gold, that's disgusting. Mike says, you think we get that Iowa kid or the Purdue guy? I'm not sure which Purdue guy you're talking about, but Iowa kid, I'm assuming you're talking about Josh Dix. And I feel good about it. All I do know is in my normal Monday, I have a conversation with folks that are in the deep end, I guess you can say, every Monday or Tuesday. And this week I did talk, and I do know that Illinois has put on a full court press on Josh Dix, and they feel good about it. Do they wish that he had not made this trip to Indiana? Of course, because now as soon as Indiana's involved, when you have Kansas, when you're going up against Kansas and Indiana, you know you're not going to be able to offer the most money. Now, it looks like Illinois is willing to match an offer, but you just never know how high that number is going to get because Kansas and Indiana really don't have any limits when it comes to their basketball funds. But I do think ultimately, if I had to guess, yeah, Josh Dix is going to commit to the Illini sometime this week. I'll have, a breaking news episode right here. So make sure you're subscribed if that does happen. Ross says, didn't we hear that a good chance on Sar and Dix both? Yes. There's Sar, I'm not as confident on right now. I don't think anything's changed from what I've gathered, but there's people out there who are pretty optimistic on it. Let's see. Philip says platoon system with the Twins. Yeah, that's the thing, Philip. Like, I can't see both guys playing together because they're the same guy. Now, if you always have an Ivisic in for 40 minutes, sign me up. That makes sense, especially in your 5-out offense. But if you have them both in, yeah, one might be 7'1" and one might be 7'2", but we saw Tommy trying to guard a 6'8" athletic power forward last year. It didn't work out. And trust me, it would be even worse with Big Z. So that's why it's one of those where if you can get Big Z to come in and accept a rotational role, and hey, we're going to play you 15, 20 minutes. You're going to spell your big brother. Maybe you'll play, or younger brother. Yeah, maybe they'll play, 5 minutes here and there together, but it's not going to be, Big Z expecting to come in and playing 25, 30 minutes. I just don't know if that's going to translate to winning Big Ten basketball, unless Orlando Antigua works his magic, which he absolutely could. Ross says, yes, Philip, it could drive defenses crazy. Absolutely. I mean, again, those two would be arguably already our two best three-point shooters next year, especially if Ben Hummerkaus doesn't come back. And in a way, you can kind of think of Big Z as the Ben Hummerkaus replacement. If Ben ultimately doesn't decide to come back, Ben was 6'9" and could shoot the three-pointer. Now, whether he did to our liking, that's different, but Big Z you can just call Big Z a bigger, linkier version of Ben Hummerkaus. But as we saw with Ben couldn't guard fours either. And certainly Big Z won't be able to. Philip says, last big twins like this you can think of was the Lopez twins at Stanford. There was also the Murray twins at Iowa. Yeah, the Lopez twins, that was a different game back then. That was an inside-out game. The game of basketball in its entirety has changed. It's now a much faster game, a much more athletic game, a much more three-point shooting game. So I don't know if the Lopez twins would have worked. And it's funny, actually. The Lopez guys were more physical, and the Ivisic are just kind of the opposite. They're just more outside in type of players. The Murrays, those are more wing type of players. But, if they could duplicate what the Murray or the Lopez success, that would be fun. But Ross is right. It would absolutely make for a very fun story. Let's see if you got anything else in here. All right. No, it doesn't look like. Okay, here we go. Mike says, I think we will be fine. Also get Dix and the other Iowa kid. Sanford. I'm curious to see if we're going to get both. But, who knows? Brian says, how often did Tommy get in foul trouble early in the game? Having another big man only helps. I absolutely agree, Brian. And that's, I say one of the big downfalls of last year's team was the complete swing and a miss on Kerry Booth. Because as you said perfectly, if Tommy got into foul trouble or Morez got into foul trouble or one of them was simply hurt, well, Illinois was in trouble then. There were games that we had to play Jake Davis to guard the big men. And think about that. Jake Davis had to guard Derek Queen on a couple plays this past season. And Illinois just can't have that happen again. They like this Jaxtis kid. They, so much so that they almost burned his red shirt halfway through the season. So I'm curious to see what his development's going to look like. But for me, it's you need talent on this team, right? It doesn't look like you're going to have that much retention from last year's team. And Big Z, again, what I like about the prospect of him coming to Champaign is that you're going to be buying low, because I don't think he's going to come at a crazy price tag that the other players are commanding. And if Orlando's somehow able to fix Big Z, you have a potential star in your hands. Another kid who could absolutely play at the next level. Thelonious Monk says, I won't lie, I'm kind of glad that Trey transferred out. Combo of him and Dix could have made for awful puns together. Yeah, that's something we absolutely have to be careful for. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, we've hit 2,600 subs on YouTube during this recording. That's why I wanted to do it live. We're not stopping here. Okay, I assure you, every single day, I've got 3 or more segments I'm planning out to discuss tomorrow and the day after that. As soon as there's breaking news, I promise I'll come on live. So make sure you've hit that notification bell. You know exactly when I do come on live. Just know that make sure you subscribe to the channel because you're not going to miss any content. If it has to do with Illinois, you'll hear about it here on Locked On Illini. I appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.